President Jacob Zuma said last weekend that the ANC is concerned with increasing fees at tertiary institutions. President Zuma said, and I quote, "This escalating cost has become another source of exclusion for the poor and vulnerable South African child." Today we ask Higher Education Minister Dr. Nzimande how he intends to address this and other issues facing young people today. Dr. Nzimande, welcome to the Justice Factor. Congratulations on a press conference today. I was amazed you had all these opportunities that you outlined for our matriculants. But I asked myself, why weren't they told all this in June last year, or in March last year, or in January last year, so that they could prepare, and we don't have this glut that we have at the moment where people are saying, where do I go now, when they have their results in their hands?
Thanks, Justice, for inviting me. No, we've been communicating all along. For instance, we've got a weekly career guidance program, radio program, in 10 languages. You know, that's the 9 African languages plus Afrikaans, where we actually are communicating all the time. We've got what we call the Apply Now campaign. For instance, last year, we distributed pamphlets explaining about NSFAS, about applying to 6,182 schools, mainly in the township and rural schools, communicating about all this.
So tell me, what is the problem with South Africans that they do not, and our matriculants as well, that they do not take up these opportunities? And now, today, we have, for example, here at eNCA, there's been talk in the newsroom about a young person who's got fantastic results and said, oh, I didn't know that I could do, I didn't know where to go. So he doesn't have a place and doesn't have a scholarship, for example.
There are many factors, Justice, although we think the situation is improving, actually, with the kinds of interventions that we've been making. But there are many reasons for that. Some, of course, they stay in the deepest of the rural areas. Perhaps it's not easy to reach them consistently, but we are trying with our radio career guidance things. But others, you know, it's a kind of typical sometimes, I would say, I'm sorry to say that, South African way of leaving things to last moment, you know, you only wake up when you actually get good results. We think we need to partner with the media, with yourselves actually, for our youngsters to understand that if you have not applied, you are not going to actually get a place. It's like if you don't have a driver's license, you cannot drive. If you drive, you are in trouble. So we actually do need to take that up, but we are taking responsibility as government to say, we are working as much as we can to increase access to information so that our Apply Now campaign is such that all our students will be able to apply on time.
These opportunities that you spoke about, can I just interrogate a bit? I mean, these, as you set out, there's 425,095 opportunities in the post-school education and training system. But many of them are opportunities that are already close to people. For example, if you say university opportunities, if you're a smart kid or a kid with access, you've already been accepted probably to VETS, UCT, KZN, many other universities.
Yes, that's why we emphasize with the Apply Now campaign early in the year. But what we were providing there was to provide to the nation, to say, what is the picture, what is available, you know, and also we can only really pin this down once the matric results are out, to say here are the opportunities that are there so that the nation knows, the country knows what are. Plus also some of them may not be obvious. For example, the opportunities we are talking about, they are only of those institutions that are within the umbrella of the Department of Higher Education and Training. We haven't mentioned agricultural colleges. There are opportunities there. We have not mentioned nursing colleges. And you might find that because we want to change this bias towards universities, this information may make kids to say, actually, if I don't have enough points to get to a university, I can be able to go somewhere else. Although our own view is that colleges, we want them to be institutions of choice, not institutions that you go to just because we have not been taken
But where
at
does
universities.
that come from? Why do we have this bias towards university? Why are people looked down upon? I'm not sure if people are looked down upon when they go to TVETs, for example.
Partly it's our colonial heritage. the British system, you know, had actually emphasized the academic route. Unlike, for instance, the German or the Swiss system, where 70% of youngsters who leave school, they go for apprenticeships and they get good jobs as motor mechanics, you know, as electricians and so on. Plus, also, I think as a country, we need to be self-critical. Look at how we elevate matric results, for instance, because that in itself then sends a message. You have to pass matric well in order to go to university. Then that's the route you must go, then you have achieved. Therefore, de-emphasizing other opportunities that are actually there.
How are you doing it? What are you doing? What is your ministry doing to de-emphasize that? Because if I go to Australia, people will tell you, oh, you know, a plumber makes more money than a medical doctor, for example.
Possibly here in Johannesburg as well. You know, that is the case.
After
you know
using
that.
the plumbers here, probably
yes.
I agree with you.
Yes, we are communicating that. We wish that we could do better working with the media to actually do that, but we are communicating that. In fact, our Apply Now campaign and our weekly career guidance services are emphasizing that. In fact, what perhaps we need to do more is to showcase students from TVET who have finished and who are proudly artisans, and they are earning good money, their positions have changed, and those of their families. That is what we need to do more in order to say, you have got a lot of opportunities, including learnerships, by the way, as well.
Let me ask you about money, because President Zuma in his January 8 statement of the African National Congress said, universities must not raise university fees because this forms part of excluding poor people, and I quite agree with that. But are you saying today to universities, don't raise your fees because of the reasons President Zuma mentioned?
The ANC is raising an important matter, as was articulated by the President on Saturday. Coincidentally, is the matter that we have agreed last year with the Vice Chancellors that we have to have a proper discussion. We are calling it, we must look at the cost drivers and how to fund higher education. It's an important matter. We've agreed that we're going to discuss it. Because
but many of them are complaining that you are starving them of the subsidies, that there's been a narrowing in the amounts of that are allocated in subsidies to universities. And
Justice, we need a comprehensive discussion, because when I raised that with them, they said, fine, if you want to control how we can increase, that's fine, but you must realize that the reality is that in South Africa, as the President said, we spend 1.4% of our GDP on higher education. That's even below the African continental average. So they are saying you can't just look at fees without also looking at government funding and the entire funding of the system. And we've agreed that we're going to sit down and actually look into all of those things, because the President is rightly concerned. Myself, I've been saying, we increase NSFAS, you increase the fees. For instance, they've said to me, there is a difference between our country's inflation and what they call higher education inflation. And they argue it's always higher because depending on the rand-dollar exchange, we have to import books, we have to import machinery that we need to use to teach at universities and so on. Those are the arguments, but we've agreed that we have to look into this and we have to come to a common understanding of what needs to be done in order to address the problem.
Last year and at the beginning of the year before, we've had protests at some universities and at some tertiary institutions where people have complained that they are being excluded because of funding. Are we going to see that again this year?
Well, it's difficult to say no, but we are doing all we can on our side. For instance, we met in November last year with all the vice chancellors. We are going to be meeting with SRCs and student organizations within the next week or two to actually discuss this, to say, how can we try to start this year on a different note? Because this thing of losing lecture time, it's something that we have to address. Interestingly, the vice chancellors also said, look, they must also look at themselves, because sometimes students go on strike because they've not been informed who is getting NSFAS, who is not getting NSFAS. So it's important that there is communication.
Part of the problem is that there have been deep issues in NSFAS, corruption that has been spoken about, where people get bursaries or get funded because they are friends of or children of so-and-so and so forth. And have those problems been addressed, and are they out of the system now? No,
we are undertaking a comprehensive forensic audit into NSFAS, precisely because we've picked up that there are these problems, that there are many students who do not qualify, And we are going to act on those who are actually defrauding the system. But we are not doing only that, Justice. We are also looking at those parents who are not rich, but they do not qualify for NSFAS. And the banks can't give them money to actually educate their own children. Like civil servants, teachers, nurses, police, they don't qualify, yet they are not rich. We are also then looking at how we can be able to access additional funds to create a loan system to address that problem, because it is a contributory factor to corruption as well.
Dr. Nzimande, thanks so much for your time. I wish I could ask you about many other things like the media and the opposition parties and so forth, but we've run out of time.
Next time, Justice, thanks.
It will be a pleasure. After the break, our winner and loser of the week. Stay with us.